Hey everybody, and welcome to today's video in which we're going to talk a bit about Plasticity, which is actually a CAD program aimed directly for artists. So why is CAD or why is Plasticity really great for artists? Well, it's very simple to get into and it is a very powerful program. So in order to check it out, just go over to plasticity.xyz. And here you can see all of the information that's available, and also here is where you can download the program. Now the great thing about this is that if you scroll all the way down, actually first of all you can download the trial version, which is 30 days for free, and the trial version is actually just like the full version. It has all the features in it, so it's a great way of trying out the software before you buy it. And again, it's a very good software because with all of the power and all of the tools it comes with, if you go down and just scroll down to purchasing it, you can see that you can get a perpetual license depending on what kind of a need you have. It can be an indie license or a studio license, and it's a relatively cheap version, and it doesn't have to break your bank. With just the indie license, you can do a hell of a lot of things with the program. So, me personally, I'm actually very much pro perpetual licenses versus subscription services because I like to own the software. Now, I have to also note that this video is not sponsored by anybody, and I'm actually making this video because I want to show everybody that this is an amazing piece of software, and it would be a great idea to actually have it under your belt for your modeling skills. So let's jump into the actual software and see how this thing looks like in there. The first thing you do whenever you jump into a new software is you always try to get a heads or tails and get your bearings on the UI as well as on the basic controls of the program and basically how it works. So this is actually what I'm going to try to do with this initial introduction video. So when you open Plasticity, more or less this is what you're going to see. And I'm going to try to break it down so it's actually very simple to understand what it is. The first and most important thing that I want you to take away from this is that Plasticity is kind of very heavy on shortcuts. And there are a couple of things that you're going to have to spend some time working with in order to pick up on the shortcuts. But as you progress with using them, it's going to get easier. But put that aside for now. So let's jump in and see how everything looks like. So at the top here, when you click and the top left, you can see that you can save your project, you can export, you can save it as a startup scene, also new file, new option, just the standard ones. And also another thing that at least for me at this moment is a bit annoying is that here you can see that which version of Plasticity you're running. In my case at least, it's 1.4.6, and regretfully right now there is no way to update your Plasticity version directly from within the program. So if you want to update your program, what you have to do is again go back to the website and then check and see which version is there. I'm kind of sure that they're going to fix this, but for now that's it. So at the moment of recording, the version that I'm doing this thing on is 1.4.6. And if you're watching this a bit later, it's probably going to be different. So let's jump over in the preference option here, because here you can actually change some things that are important. First of all is your navigation settings. You can choose what kind of navigations you want, depending from which software you're coming. So if you scroll down here, you can see that you can go through the Plasticity default, which is the middle mouse to orbit, right mouse to pan. You can go through Blender, you can go through Maya, Moment of Inspiration 3D, 3ds Max, Fusion 360, or Rhino. So all of these are presets. So if you want to have your shortcuts or navigation shortcuts or navigation presets set up exactly like these programs, you can choose any of these. For now, I'm actually going to leave it on the Plasticity default. If you scroll down to performance, here you actually have some things. In this case, I'm actually not going to change any of these, because for the GPU rendering quality, if it's normal, the anti-aliasing and texture bit depth is going to be controlled, so it's recommended for most devices. While the CPU faceting quality can be switched over to the extra detail option, but the problem with this is that it will make all of the edges look smoother, but it's going to bog down your computer quite a bit, especially on more complex models. So again, I would just stick with the regular ones or the default options in here. Now we scroll down over to appearance, and this is where you can change how your user interface is going to look like. So you can change any of the colors. For me, I'm actually very okay with how everything looks, but for example, if I scroll over and change these colors, you can see that the buttons keep changing and they get different look based on how this thing is chosen. You can choose the neutral color and the viewport background, but like I said, for now I'm actually going to leave it as it is. I believe it was orange. There we go. Now we go down to grids or grid and units. This is a great thing to actually control, because it will literally control how you work in the program. So just like in 3ds Max, where you choose what kind of a user or what kind of units are you going to be using, this is the same thing here. So if you want to use millimeters or centimeters or meters for something large, or maybe if you're going to be from the US and you like using inches and feet, you can choose this. Then you have the grid size, which again we're gonna see how this thing is shown. You can choose how many of these grid lines you're gonna have and how many grid lines until you have an accented line. But for now, just leave all of these. The backup, how long it takes to do a backup server, not really that important. Space mouse. This thing I believe was added with the 1.4 version of Plasticity. So if you are the proud owner of a space mouse, you can actually customize how this thing is going to look and work. And the last is just the general thing: automatically invoke commands like offset, extrude, fillet based on the current selection. This is actually very helpful, but we'll see how this works a bit later in the video. Now let's take a look at the actual user interface and see how everything has been partitioned so it's easier to use. We're going to start off from the left side. Here we have the outliner. In this outliner, you basically have everything that's within your scene. In this case, the only thing that I have here is this cube, and it's actually a solid. So if I select it, you're going to see this yellow outline going around whatever that we have selected. Now, as we move forward and we create other solids, shapes, we can see that all of them are going to appear here. But let's circle back to this a bit later. Now, another thing, while we're at this left side of the screen, we're going to look at the top left thing, and this is where we have our selection options, and they are varying from basically just like we have in 3ds Max. We have control points or vertices. Then we have the second one is edge, or just like in 3ds Max. Then we have the faces, and then we have the whole body. And you can scroll through all of these by just pressing 1, 2, 3, 4 on the keyboard, or just pressing 5 and selecting everything. And also, if you have something selected, by just pressing the tab button, you can go into the selection for everything. Just like pressing 5, the tab button does the same thing. Now, another thing while I'm actually talking about selection, I want to note is that generally whenever you're going to try to select something, like for example, like you see over here, since I have edge selected, all of these edges are going to be selected. But look at what happens now. Now, only half of this thing got selected. And if I go like this, all of it got selected. So the interesting thing that I want to mention while we're at the selection is that in plasticity, it is very important if you're going to do your selection going from the left to the right or from the right to the left. The main difference being that if you go from the left to the right, in order for the selection to be active, it needs to select the whole thing. As you can see over here, the only thing that I outlined right now is just this edge. If I go over the middle part, you can see that now everything that's on this left side was selected. Unlike going from the left to the right, going from the right to the left, as soon as this selection touches an edge, it will automatically be selected. So this can actually do wonders for your workflow, especially when you want to select certain objects or certain edges. You need to remember that going from the left to the right in the selection thing is very much different than going from the right to the left. Now, since we actually mentioned this, let's scroll down over to the bottom left portion of the UI, and this is where you have the navigation or manipulation tools. You have the option to move certain objects or selections, rotate and scale. Also here you have the options for Boolean, cut solid with curve, mirror, and duplicate objects. Now all of these are going to be explained in a future video where we're going to go over all of these, but it is important just to mention that at the bottom left corner, these manipulation tools always stay the same. Now, at this right corner here, we have these three dots. If you click on it, it's basically not telling you anything, but depending on what you have selected, you're gonna get different set of options. So for example, by just selecting everything, you can see that we have an option selected, which is fillet. Now, why do we have this fillet appearing? Well, if you remember, when we went to the preferences and down at this general option, this option here is ticked, so it will automatically invoke commands like offset, extrude, and fillet based on what you have selected. So in reality, this is like a smart way of the program trying to predict what you're trying to do, and it's going to try to help you out do it faster without having to do anything on your behalf. And also, if you, for example, if you just click here, and let's zoom in, you can see that if I move this thing to the left, it's doing a fillet. If I move it to the right, it's actually making a rounded fillet. So a very, very easy way of filleting edges. Now, when you're doing this, again, on the bottom right, you can actually see all of these shortcuts. And if you remember from the beginning, I told you that this program is very heavy on using shortcuts. And you don't have to remember all of them, but the most useful ones you're going to be using all the time. So they're going to be in muscle memory in very short time. But if you need some help on how to remember what does what, whatever you have selected on the bottom here, you're always going to be able to see what is possible and what you need to do in order to achieve that look. So for now, I'm just going to press the escape button, because I don't want to do anything to it. And let's see, maybe if I select one of these edges, you can see here that we have draft face, match face, sweep, revolve, extrude. And if I go ahead and select a different edge, you're going to see that those options here are different. So everything you see at the bottom right corner, all of these options, they are very dependent on what you have selected. Now let's take some time to actually look at how we can create stuff in Plasticity. I'm going to deselect this, and right now, if I go over on this shelf, what you can see here, this little shelf on the side is where you have all of your creation tools. Just like in Photoshop, if you take a look at the corners here, you can see these little triangles, which means that if you hold down the button, you have more options here when you're trying to create something. So all of these options or all of these creation tools can be accessed. If you see a triangle, just hold it down. It will give you different creation options. Now, what you can do here is, if you see over here, there is a line. This line here is basically going to tell you that everything that you're seeing above here, you're going to be creating with splines, or if you want to call it splines, if you're coming from 3ds Max, or curves as Plasticity is using them. So for example, if I go ahead, let's say that I want to create something, but actually before I forget, one other thing that I also wanted to mention is, for example, when you go ahead and you rotate around your object, the way that I'm doing it is holding Alt and clicking on the middle or on the scroll button on the mouse, and you can rotate. If I let go of Alt as just using the middle or the scroll button, I can pan around. And also at the top over here, you have this cube. And just like in 3ds Max, this is the cube that is showing you where your construction axes are. So for example, if you click here, you can snap directly on the x-axis. If you snap here, now you're in the y-axis. If you snap on here, now you're in the top view or on the z-axis. So that's a quick way of navigating through your viewport, which again is very important to do, especially if you're going to start drawing something as I was about to start. So for this one, let's see how it works. I'm going to click on the top here, and now I'm actually in the top viewport, which you can see it's stated here. Now, let's go over with the simplest one, with the line. So for example, if I click here, it will allow me to go ahead and put a line wherever I want to create a line. And what you're going to notice here is that as I'm drawing this line, I can see how long this line is and what is the angle that this line is going to be created at. So in this case, I can control both of these very precisely by pressing on the tab button. So if I press tab, and let's try with 60, hit enter, and press tab again, I can literally control what is the angle that I want to make this thing. So let's go 45. And now if I want to actually go over here, you can see that as I'm turning this thing, it's following that angle here. Now, if I want to accept this, all I have to do is just right click. This will create this line. Now, let's go over a line again. Click here and drag it to, let's put another 60 and click on accept again. And now let's click one more of these lines. But in my case, what I want to do is I want to make it so it's as long as this line. So here's another shortcut that's amazing when you're doing this. When you go over with the creation line still selected, go over this vertice or this start, click on the shift button, hold it, and now you can actually click and release, and now you can actually see how or where I need to set this line in order to make it parallel with this line here. So click here, and right click. So this way I've actually made this thing into a full-on closed loop. Now I'm going to select all of these lines here in the curves, and by just pressing on the J button, I can make all of these just into one line. Or also I can go over here where it says join curves or sheets. As you can see, J, by just pressing J, now they're all just one line. And if I go ahead, we can see that this line is now, there we go, one line. I don't have to use it as multiple curves. And here's the interesting part now. If I have this thing selected and I go over to the option where it says extrude, we're just pressing E, I can literally draw out and right click. But now look at what happened. We now in here on the left side in the outliner have three different categories. We have a solid, which is a full-on 3D object. We have a sheet, which is a 3D object that has open holes, and we have curves. Now, I'm going to select this sheet and move it over here. And for example, if I select all of these edges here and I go ahead and patch the holes, that's going to close this thing. But you're also going to notice that this thing is still a sheet because on the bottom it's still open. So again, let's go over, select the bottom, press on the patch holes, right click to accept, and now you can notice that we no longer have a sheet in here, but instead that sheet has been converted into a solid. So that is the main thing that you need to understand, is the difference between a solid, a sheet, and a curve inside of Plasticity. There is quite a bit more to talk about how all of this works with the modeling and drawing, but actually I'm going to leave it, like I said, for a different video, because in this introduction video I just want to go over the most basics things so you actually understand what you're looking at when you're looking at the user interface. Now, the only thing that we have left over here is to cover two more things. At the top here, you actually have four more buttons that they are actually important. The first one is the perspective or orthographic view. So if by clicking it like this, you can actually control how this thing is shown. You can either be in perspective or orthographic view. If you feel better looking at it in perspective, you can do it like this. And also, if you right click on this thing, you can control what is the field of view. So if you want to have 50, it can be like this. If you want to go 35, it's going to be a bit closer, so it's going to be a different field of view. So again, you can control this thing by opening up or closing the option for perspective and orthographic. And if you're going to work in perspective, make sure you set up the FOV to something that you like by just and you can access this by right clicking on the button. The second thing here that you need to also see is the second button. Okay, and this is the toggle overlays. So this will, as you can see, this line in here, and that will show you, there we go, that will show you where these lines are. And the last thing here, you have the toggle X-ray mode. Now X-ray, if I click here, you can actually see in here at the moment that even though these edges are in the back, if I click this thing off, you can now no longer see them. So by keeping the X-ray, you can always see the edges that are on the back side of your model. And the last one is the render mode. By just clicking on it, you can see that now everything changed. And the reason that this thing changed is because when this thing is actually turned on, what Plasticity does is when you right click here, you can choose what kind of a material this thing is going to be rendered as. Now these are different materials. For example, you have the red one, you have the white one. Now this one is actually very nice when you have material, or when you have a object and you want to see how the parallel sides of this object look like. You have one for vertical sides, how they look like, and this way you can gauge whether or not your surfaces are parallel and they don't have any imperfections. Then you have this option over here, And this one is actually interesting because when you have this thing selected, you can select any of these, and pressing the M button will allow you to get into the material where you can change all of these options. But again, this can be for its own particular video. So for now, I'm just gonna skip it, and we'll cover more about materials in a future video. The other thing also here is you have the option to turn on snap to grid. You turn this thing on. Let's showcase the grid. There we go. And also if I go lower, now you can actually see the grid points. So by clicking on enable snapping, you can control what this thing is going to snap over to. Is it faces, curves, or edges? Then you have more about construction planes, but this again is going to be a video on its own, because in short, these construction planes are the planes on which you're going to be drawing your sketches. But again, this is a bit more complicated because you can have planes from selection, planes from camera, you can have custom construction planes, but all of that we can cover in a future video. So for now, what is important is that you understand how the user interface works, how you can navigate through your window user interface, how to set up the preferences here, what you want to work with, your grid and units, and that's pretty much going to cover the basis for plasticity. So I hope you guys had fun with this one and you managed to learn something new from the video. If nothing else, at least it enticed you to try out the free trial of the program and try it out for yourself. See if this might interest you into adding it into your arsenal of skills for modeling. If you would like to support me, you can always click the join button, and the direct links will be in the description below. There's also a thanks button underneath every video on the channel now, so you can use that as well. And as always, the most helpful thing you can do is simply click on the like and the subscribe buttons and leave your comment in the video below. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you all in the coming videos. Bye-bye.